Hi, I'm Jason. I started Commusoft back in 2006 with the intention of transforming the way field service companies manage their business. Today's show is all about women in trades, and I'm joined by Hattie Hasan from Stopcocks. Welcome to another episode of Success in the Field, where we explore the world of field service and highlight best practices for achieving success. In this edition, we're speaking to a good friend of mine, Hattie, a trailblazer in her own right and who's been championing women in the trades for years. She founded Stopcocks, a female-led plumbing company, and is launching the first ever UK register for women plumbers, heating engineers, electricians, painters, decorators, and other tradeswomen. So let's find out about the current landscape when it comes to representation and the barriers women face and how we can break them down. Welcome to the show, Hattie. Give us a bit of an introduction about yourself.
Hi, Jason. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Hattie Hasan. I started as a teacher back in the 80s. I gave that up in 1989 because I wanted to basically have my own destiny, and teaching just wasn't doing it for me anymore. And so I looked into what I could do, and I remember when I was at school, I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to do engineering or metal work, and I was told girls don't do that. And I think, that problem, although it seems to have gone away, hasn't completely gone away. But in my day, it was really as strict as that. That's a boy's subject. You can't do that. So when I look back as an adult, so I was 27, and I thought I want to do something else. What am I going to do? And I look back to those times, and I thought, actually, I'm gonna live that dream. But do I really still want to do it? So I enrolled myself in an evening class, and literally, Jason, the first minute of doing it, I thought, yes, this is what I want to do. And so I enrolled myself on a full-time course, not a full-time course, a proper building college, and I jumped straight in. And so that was back in 1990, so 31 years ago. And I tried to find a job. I couldn't find a job at all. I couldn't get a single placement. I couldn't hardly even get an interview, and nobody even bothered to get back to me. And so back in 1990, there wasn't emails and what have you. So I phoned everyone up to follow up. And I was getting things like, oh, are you ringing up for your husband? Are you ringing up for your son? And I was like, no, I'm ringing up for myself. And they were like, oh, no, sorry, no places. In fact, it was so stereotypically bad that when I went to college, it was a building college, there wasn't even toileting facilities for women in the building, apart from the staff. So I always had to use the staff loos. I believe all of that's changed now, but back then it was like that. And also, you're probably too young to remember this, but page 3 girls, the calendars of naked women all over the workshops. And those were the sorts of things that any woman wanting to get into a trade industry was having to put up with. So, I was pretty thick-skinned. It didn't affect me. One day I just went up to the tutor and I said, I'm actually quite thick-skinned, so, I can put up with it. But if you want to encourage more women to come into this college, how do you think they're going to feel? How do you think I feel when I come into this college and all those lads are looking at me, knowing I've got a pair of them under my T-shirt? And so it was great, because the next week they were gone and they never reappeared. So I kind of had a little tiny victory even back then when I was just, young and green. So anyway, I started to, nobody would employ me, so I employed myself right from day one. And so I just went out and posted handmade flyers that I'd made, because I used to be a teacher, so I knew how to make materials. A primary teacher, so I was making cards and all sorts of things. So I knew how to do that. Posted them, trudged the streets, and bought second-hand tools and a second-hand answering machine, and waited for the phone to ring. And it hasn't stopped ringing since.
What a strong story. I think it's quite interesting. You mentioned, obviously, a very stereotypical kind of almost what you would expect if from where we are now to even back then, and obviously at least some progression, and maybe progression in an individual rather than maybe an institution. What have you in terms of then and now? Obviously, you've got such a great sort of ability to sort of see, what you've built now and what's important now and where you came from. How do you think, things have changed over the course of your experience? And do you think there are, progress has been made towards training more women in the field service industry?
I definitely think that in trades, things have changed. But in a way, it still is a dinosaur industry. And we're still finding those old attitudes, even though there are new generations coming through all the time. We're still finding old attitudes are existing in places. And sometimes those places, it's hidden. So you don't actually know it until it's too late. So, we do hear horror stories of young women trying to get a foothold in the industry and just being, sexually harassed is the best way to put it. Sometimes, even in my day when I was at college, I was being, asked out on dates and what have you. And I was like, look, I just want to plumb. Just leave me to it. Let me plumb. I'm not interested in any of that. So, and once I kind of found that once I'd said that, it kind of cleared the way for me to not have to have that. And I did get some attitudes of, well, I've got to try, haven't I? I'm a man. And I think that still exists, but much less so than it used to. So in terms of what's happened, how we've changed, colleges are becoming much more receptive to women, although the individual attitudes are evolving, but they're nowhere near evolved enough. And we could always, do with more evolution there.
It's a slow industry to change, a slow industry to adapt, even, and I'm not talking about as something as important as sexism or, access for women in the industry. I'm talking as simple things like the way people behave in business is quite slow to adopt. And I've been, working in this nearly 15 years. I've seen my own set of experiences where businesses have changed. And I think you're completely right that there has been some change. And there are some good trailblazing companies out there doing good things. But unfortunately, there's definitely a lot of old heads out there with a certain mindset. And I can definitely appreciate that. Still something that is potentially still happening today.
I never want to dwell on the negative, but I think we have to know that is there. We can't hide it. We have to know it's there and find a way of dealing with it. And sometimes it is unconscious bias. So sometimes it might be somebody's just going, oh, a woman in trades, that's unusual. That's more unconscious bias than, oh, you shouldn't be doing it. And that's just pure sexism. But, and there's a whole range in between those two extremes, isn't there? So we can't deny it, but we don't dwell on it.
I think what's quite interesting as well is, and I think we've had this conversation once before, is around the fact that there's a genuine benefit to hiring women in trades. There's something that says it, put all of that stuff aside from a purely business perspective. There's a reason to do this. Can you talk a little bit about, your experience with that?
Yeah, well, when I decided I wanted to be more than just a plumber, so basically it was my move from being a self-employed plumber into, I guess, the field service industry, because it was like, well, now and I'm always getting questions, I'm getting contacted, I want to be a plumber, can I be your apprentice, and all of this. And I was getting those requests from women as far north as, like Northumberland, and as far south as Southampton. They were coming from everywhere. And I live in West Yorkshire. And I just thought, I can't, I'd love you to be my apprentice. Are you going to come, 200, 300 miles every morning? Or am I going to do that? So I had to think of some other way to help people, because I hadn't really let go of my teaching background either. So I kind of thought, this is a brilliant opportunity for me to be able to actually leave something behind after I'm gone. So I started thinking about ways in which I could help other women. And I started writing down what my experiences were, what I'd learned over the years. And I thought that, well, the best way for me to do that, apart from cloning, and at that point they'd only ever cloned a sheep, so it was no good. Apart from that, the only thing I could do was create an organisation that could support lots of women And I did that by creating Stopcocks Women Plumbers. And we did that for the first few, I tried so many different ways of doing it. And eventually in 2017, we created a franchise for it. But prior to that, I'd been doing it in all different manners of ways. And it had all been field service. So it was all like people would call a central place and we'd allocate somebody to them. And I'd have to make sure that each one of those people was top notch. So, you know, that old saying, if you want something doing, do it yourself. So I would actually mentor those women. I would travel up and down the country, working with each individual plumber, helping them to become gas safe, all that sort of stuff. It was actually killing me. It was quite strenuous to rush up and down the country to do that. But the community was so small at that point, that was the only way. It's changed now. You know, 10 years down the line, we've got a lot more. We've built a bigger community. We've kind of changed our field service to include all trades and not just plumbers. And I'm not running up and down the country because we've been able to create online communities, and we've got new technologies about video calling and what have you, which means that I can be in somebody's living room even though I'm not there, or in somebody's bathroom, or in somebody's boiler, or whatever. And that has really increased our reach and our effectiveness. It's been brilliant, actually. The only thing that we haven't had until now is the proper software. I just have to say that, because when we discovered you, we were, and anyone who's watching this, I haven't been asked to say this, but it is true. When we discovered Commusoft, it was giving us everything that we need for our new venture.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
But I think it was from you know, from two things. I got kind of 2 points from that. That's quite interesting. Technology, and I'm not talking about Commusoft. I'm talking about just general technology of, like, you know, WhatsApp and video calling and all this sort of stuff. It's quite interesting how that's had such a profound effect. And I think, you know, when you think of what is and was a minority group of people potentially feeling isolated because they don't know that there's others out there, technology bringing those people together has such an impact on that community, I suspect, because, you know, they're more likely to reach out and say, I'm interested. Give them the confidence to actually reach out and say, I want to do this as well, which I think is such a lovely thing for technology to do, considering it has so many other positive and negative effects. It's so nice to see that that's being successful. From the customer perspective, though, I'm kind of interested to see, you know, obviously Stopcocks, hugely successful business, so well done. But from the customer perspective, what was the reaction from them? I mean, obviously they're making a choice to call you. And your branding is very, very clear what you're all about, which I think is amazing. Sort of, what was the feedback? Did you have any sort of, you know, moments in your career where you're like, this is like, you know, at the heart, I'm so glad I've done this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, when I first started, I just wanted to be a plumber. I didn't say to myself, women ain't doing this, so I want to do it. I didn't say that. I just thought, what can I do that's going to fulfill me? How can I gain control of my own life and my own destiny, my own future, my income, my holidays, and all of that? I'm an independence freak, I have to say. So I strive for that all the time. And so I didn't really think about it, but every single customer's house that I went into, they were like, oh, you know, we've had plumbers before and they've done this and they've done that, and we've had workmen and they've done this and they've done that, and I'm so glad I found a woman. And I started to collect those stories in a way, first of all just in my head, but, you know, as email and what have you started happening, we started getting emails all the time about that sort of thing. And I started then to look at why I was different, because I just thought, well, isn't it just common sense that if somebody phones you and leaves you a message, you ring them back? Isn't it common, you know, kind of courtesy that if you make an appointment at 2:00, that you arrive at 2:00, or if something happens, you ring them up to say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it? Isn't that just common practice? And I discovered over my years that wasn't common practice. But for me, that was just the way I was. And when I started to create a community of women, I did that off my own back. way back, probably in about 2007, I started doing that. And as soon as social media started, really, I started to use it. And I was hearing similar stories like, well, don't, and they're always telling me that, people don't turn up or they don't call back. But I just think that's common sense. And they would be saying exactly the same things that I was saying. So I started to realize that we as a species, if you like, are different. And I started to note what those differences were. And that was what gave me the idea, really, that I had to enable more the customers, basically, to have that experience. And, the whole point of me going into somebody's house was to make it better than it was before I got there, not worse. And so some of the stories I was hearing, like, I've had to hire a, deep cleaning company, or I've had to spend 4 days cleaning up after them, or I've had to do this, or I've had to do that. And I just thought, well, that's never happened to me, because, people have rung me up in crying saying, I can't believe how kindly you've left the place. Or, they've been on holiday and they've left me to fit an ensuite bathroom, and they've come back and they've said, where on earth are all the pipes? What have you done? My house is so clean. And that's because I would go there after the job was finished and deep clean the place myself, so that when they got back, that was the experience that they had. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's like that. And I'm not saying just because we're women, we're like that. But I am saying that it is a stereotype that we will be like that. But we don't take that to chance. I mean, we don't leave that to chance. We do kind of, especially with the Stopcocks code of conduct, that is built in. We have to actually do those things. So, I think for the customer, it wasn't me that began to differentiate myself from other people. It was the customers who started doing it. And as a result of that, I've kind of run with it and thought, well, this is what customers want, so let's try and provide it for them.
Do you know what I love about that? I love the fact that it has nothing to do with the fact you're a woman. It's not. It's just, it's pure and simple textbook business, which is start something, figure out what's working, do more of what's working, keep doing more of what's working, and expand, which is, is lovely to hear, because actually it has nothing to do with sex at all.
No,
It's purely about good business from the beginning. Good for, yeah, exactly. Love it. I mean, that's really nice to hear. I mean, we've talked a little about obstacles in trade, in terms of things like education and access. Do you think I mean, obviously 30 years ago, I'm sure there were very different obstacles to today, but let's talk about today, because I'm hoping there are women out there that might watch this and come away with something. What if you were speaking to, and you obviously do, but through this video, if you're speaking to someone that's watching this, that is thinking about this, let's talk about some of the obstacles that they might face, so they're prepared, and also what you would advise them to sort of how to go about tackling those.
There are obstacles to entering the trade, whether you're a man or a woman, because of the system itself. And there's been a huge discussion just yesterday on Twitter between a few of us around how that might be able to change, and how the system as it is isn't working, and how how we might be able to move forward. I don't know if we have influence, but we have opinions for sure. So those obstacles are there for men and women, but there are some obstacles that are there particularly for women. And yes, it's based slightly on stereotypes, but I was on an interview a couple of years ago, or maybe even a couple of years ago, and it was just at the beginning of apprenticeship week on a radio show. And somebody texted in and said, oh, we hate hiring women because they go off and have babies. And I just thought, and I had to do everything I could to not explode and say to the guy, look, someone has to have the babies. Why are women being penalised for having babies? That is ridiculous. We have babies, and we have to, you're happy, you guys are happy that the population and your genes are being passed on. So in order for you, if you really say you want to include women in the industries, all industries or any business, the ways of working have to change. health and safety has to change, because it's not just, to do with a guy who is, 6 foot tall and can lift however much weight. All those things have to change. Employment rules have to change. Employment practices have to change. Everything has to change. And I think that's why it hasn't, because it's so overwhelming. There's so much that has to change in order to overcome all the obstacles, that it's almost like you've got your feet tied together and you're trying to climb a hill. Sometimes we feel that way. And in order for us, so we hear from stories about, because we're talking to women all the time, we don't know what the extent of it is amongst the male population, but we're hearing all the time women saying, I'm willing to work for free. Can anyone give me experience? I've been going to college and I just can't get the experience I need to qualify. So because of our community that we've built up, the way we're trying to overcome that is that we are trying to pair people up. So, and again, social media, technology has helped enormously at this, because we can put a post out to our community and somebody will say, oh yeah, I'm doing a bathroom, or I'm doing a shower, or I'm doing a boiler, and if anyone wants to come along and learn something or help me lift it, then I'm available. And we find that we've been able to pair more groups together than, we think, than colleges.
I think the community aspect of this is going to be so powerful, because something has to change, as you said. And if the only thing that can change is the things that you've got in your control, then that's that's the way to do it. And as I said, I think as businesses get more and more switched on to the value of a workforce that is diverse, then hopefully the wider community takes over as well. And at some point you can then retire and can rely on the fact that someone else will take the torch. But no, it's good to hear. Do you think, how would your average field service owner, so we're talking again, moving beyond the sort of push and the community side of it, how would an average business owner, I'm not saying go about hiring, but let's say they specifically wanted to diversify their workforce, they wanted to go about hiring women, where would they start?
Well, we get contacted by companies all the time, and basically they want us to do their advertising for them, which we refuse to do, because they say, we had a phone call just the other day from a company who said, we want to hire more women, so can we give you our advert and will you share it? And we were a little bit resistant to that, because there are companies that make tons of money by, that you have to pay to advertise. So you can't just come to us because we're women and think that, we're just going to do everything for free. So we've kind of, it's a difficult question to answer, because we're kind of in this one little bubble, if you like, of our community, and everyone else is trying to get into it. So when we franchised, we got contacted by loads of companies, and basically what they wanted us to do was promote their services to our community. And I said, I'd love to do that. However, I'm not just going to do that. What I'm actually going to do is I'm not going to tell people to buy your boiler or use your tools or this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create something that turned out to be our Women Installers Together conferences. And if you want to be part of that, you want to get access to this community, you're going to sponsor that event. And not only are you going to sponsor that event, I'm going to interview you, your top person, and I'm going to make sure that you're doing this for the right reasons. Because if you just want to throw money at it and say, oh, we've done women, I'm not interested. And the first event we ran, we thought no one would turn up, but we were phoned by the hotel, by the venue, to say, you better get round here because there's a queue round the corner. And it was so well received that we were able to run, we've run 3 of them now, and then it was turned 2020, and
yeah.
Everything
end of that, yeah.
We're hoping to go back to that. From that, what we managed to do was we managed to create a core group of people that are supporters of getting more women in. So I think that it's not just a matter of a campaign here and there. It's not just a matter of talking to us and hoping we'll do all the work for you, because we won't. I've spent 30 years building something. I'm not just going to say, here it is for you. So we offer a consultancy service around looking at the language that you use in your advertising, where you put that stuff, pictures, all kinds of, it starts from the very basic thing. If you want to get more women in, talk to them in a way that's inclusive. There has been research that has shown that inclusive language doesn't discourage men, but saying things like tradesman discourages women. Saying things like one-man lift discourages women. But if you say two-person lift, or if you say tradesperson, it doesn't discourage men. So just simple things like that. And also the thing about getting women in trades is I find that the motivations for women to enter trades is not just money. So you need to talk to them about how it's going to actually positively impact their lives in your advertising. So it starts from there. And then, of course, you need to follow through as a company, and you need to change your practices so that if a woman has to leave at 2:30 because a child is sick, you have to allow her to do it.
A business doing this is not just about tick the box, I've hired some women. It's got to be fundamental to the way they operate. Their operating procedures, the rules, everything in about that business may have to change. May not, but it may have to change. And people, I think, ultimately have to be open to the fact that it may have to change. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think anyone that is out there thinking exactly, let's just hire some women for inclusivity, I think needs to maybe step back and think a little bit more about it, because there's no benefit to anybody hiring some women, not changing them and leaving. Doesn't benefit you as a business, doesn't benefit those people joining your company either.
Yeah, and what ends up happening is we get it all the time, companies saying to us, well, women don't want to be a part of our company. We're like, well, make your company something that they would want to be part of then.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah.
And if you can make that happen, then actually everybody benefits, not just the women. Everybody benefits. Wouldn't it be brilliant if you had a policy in your company where if a parent needed to leave, they weren't scared that they were going to lose their job or their wages, be that parent a mother or a father? Wouldn't it be brilliant? Your productivity would be high, your retention rate would be high. It just, what's not to love, basically?
So let's jump into your newest project. So we had a conversation about this the other day. I think it's definitely worth, obviously, spending some time talking through. Do you want to give us a sort of overview what's involved?
Okay, so during the lockdown that started in March 2020, we furloughed ourselves because a lot of our plumbers said we had no idea it was going to go on for a year. So a lot of us were relishing some time off and time to decorate our houses and what have you. Once we'd done all of that and the lockdown was still going on, we were hearing disturbing news about the increase in the incidences of domestic violence. And just to share something personal, I came from a background of domestic violence, and it's always been something that's been in the back of my mind that I wanted to see if I could do something about, or how could I do something about this. And obviously we can't change the incident, we can't change the people who are doing it, but maybe we can not aggravate it. So I thought, and also because putting together all the stories, as I said earlier, around women who just had bad experiences in their domestic life and just didn't and wanted to use a tradeswoman. So and organisations that had been contacting us saying, brilliant that you provide plumbers, but do you provide electricians? Do you provide plasterers? We need a decorator, or we need this, we need that. And if we have that work done by a tradesman, we're going to have to evacuate everybody in the refuge. So it's going to cost us a lot of money. It's going to be very stressful for the women and children in that building. So bringing all of that together and having the time and space in my brain to think about it, I thought this is a really perfect time for us to build something better. So I actually spoke to my mum, and because when we were growing up, very short personal story, when we were growing up, if we ever needed work doing in the house, we had to call a tradesman. Even if my mum offered him a cup of tea, it would inflame my dad, and he'd be angry for the next 3 days, and we'd all suffer physically as well as emotionally. So it would have been, and she said it would have been so much nicer if we could call on women, because then he would not feel that way, even though there was no grounds for him to feel that way anyway. So I contacted a few other tradeswomen that we knew, an electrician and a decorator and this and that, and we spoke to them, and we started a crowdfund, and it was incredibly successful. So our goal was 15,000 and we made 20 odd, and people are still donating to that crowdfund. So it was definitely something that needed to happen and was supported by people all over the country and from all different sectors of society. So it basically is a place, we formed it as a not-for-profit. So there are no shareholders to give money to. All we need to do is pay for it to run itself, and everything after that can go towards the things that we want to do. So we want to train more women, and through other knowledge of our communities, we found that a lot of women, and maybe I did that too, fix themselves by fixing things. So we kind of thought, if you can, a trade is a fantastic thing. Not only does it kind of give you confidence in being able to look after your own environment, but it also means you don't have to invite strangers in. So if you're a vulnerable woman, or if you're escaping domestic violence, and you actually never need to call in a tradesman because you know how to do everything in your own house. In fact, you're so good at it, you can go out and earn money at it. How transformative would that be of your life? So that was the premise under which we started. It's a community interest company, so it's allowed to make money, but it's not allowed to make profit, to give profits to shareholders. And we wanted to be completely transparent about the fact that that's what this company is about. It's about several things, and it actually became about more than that. It became about collecting data, which is another reason why technology like yours is going to be really fantastic. And with that data, using it to drive change in the industry, but also providing tradeswomen to anyone who wants them, any sort of tradeswoman, and also to enable us to train women, create training centres where women can train in safe spaces, and get themselves out of situations they don't like being in. So down the line, we want to create a trust fund where women can access finance in order to train. So those are the main things. It's to count, to increase, and to enable women to access money in order for them to train. And all of that will change the industry. It has to, because when there's 30%, not this silly little 1%, when there's 30% of us, 40% of us, then in trades are women, then I think even 20% is going to radically change the attitudes of the industry as a whole. And so the best way to do that is by using field services, because again, we still can't clone me.
It's interesting you say that. Do you think, I was going to ask you a question in a moment, but I think, potentially answer that is, do you think that is what, you said it right at the beginning, that you wanted to leave something behind. You wanted to do something that's impactful, and every part of this conversation is inspiring because it's all about what you can control. And I think so many people dwell on the things that they can't control. COVID has been an example. All these things have been going wrong. You can't control any of that. What you can do is make adjustments in your life where within your control circle, I call it. You're the thing that you have. The decisions that you can make to positively impact either your life or someone else's. And I think, you said just then 20%, 30%, 40%. Do you think that's the success metric for you? Do you think that's the thing that you're driving towards, or is there something else that you think, when you get to that moment in your life and you look back and you say, this has been successful, this is exactly what I wanted? What is that? What does that look like?
I think that definitely is a big part of it. Because right from the very beginning, when I started to look outside of my own little life in 2006 and 7, my idea was that any woman who wants to be a plumber should be able to be one. So this has kind of grown. It's anybody who wants to train in trade, any woman who wants to train in trades should be able to do it. But I want more. I want more. I don't just want them to have to fight. I don't want to have to say to every woman who comes to me, oh, don't give up, grow a hard skin, do this, do that. Why should we? Why can't the industry change around us for a change? And why do we always have to change to be like the status quo? Let's change the status quo. And I think when I can see a tipping point, I'm going to begin to feel like, I think this anyway, I'm probably going to want even more once I get there, but let me just say this for now. Once I can begin to see a tipping point, I'm going to begin to feel like we're really succeeding. And every single time now we launched the register for sign-ups in October. We've already had about 500 to 600 sign-ups of tradeswomen. We had actually printed a map yesterday of the expanse, the spread of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to print maps up every 6 months so that we can see our progress throughout our time. And there are so many huge gaps in the country, and that's either because A, they don't know about us and we don't know them, or B, because they don't exist. And so that's why we really want to count everybody, and we really want to reach every tradeswoman. And every time we speak to someone and they say, oh, I know a painter and decorator, we say, well, tell her about us. Oh, I know an electrician, tell her about us. It's completely free for any tradeswoman to be on the register. We're looking for sponsors, for companies to sponsor it on a regular basis to show us that they are committed to making the changes that they say and that we say and that we all want to see. And if we just had a few companies that could part with a few £1,000s a year, we could run that and we could bring everything forward. We could bring everything forward. We could start training. We're already actually got plans in mind to start training women in our local refuge. And that is, I didn't think we'd be doing that straight away, but we are, because of companies that have come forward and said, look, instead of buying this, have it, like yourselves. And other companies have said, instead of buying this, have it, use your money for other things. And what we've used that money for so far is to engage on a part-time basis 2 survivors who are working for the register in different capacities, not in the field, but in the office, which enables us to do other things. So we're not stuck in the minutiae of stuff. So, we wake up in the morning, we think that is a success, that has happened. But obviously it's, the road is kind of quite long. And like I say, I think the tipping point, when I can see that we're at the top of the hill and there's a tipping point, then I think I'm going to sit back and say, this is going to succeed. Because a lot of companies say, well, we ran a campaign and we got 2 women, and then after 4 years they left and we've not ever had another woman. And I think that's the problem, is that there isn't a rolling programme of enabling and filling up those gaps as they appear. And if that was there, then I think all of that would help our cause, and it would help the industry as a whole, all industries actually.
You know what I'd love to hear? I'd love to hear a positive story. I think we talked a lot about, some of the challenges and some of the difficulties, but there are obviously amazing stories out there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about a more recent story that you've come across, and then for anyone watching this, give us where they can go to sign up to this new register.
Okay, well, something that happened just yesterday, and it really pertains to the fact that we have this community of a supportive community. What happened yesterday was somebody wrote in our private Facebook group that they were feeling like they weren't sure where their future was going to be. Sometimes it's really hard to be, I'm self-employed and I don't know if I'm going to be able to survive. And sometimes I just wish I could have a job and a regular income. And literally within 5 minutes, there were 20 messages on there saying, we've all had days like that, keep your chin up, I'm always here. And so 13 minutes later, she wrote on there, I love you guys. It was only 13 minutes ago that I was feeling like giving up, and now I feel like I've got a future. And that's the sort of thing that we created within our community. And that was so heartwarming. She is on the register, and she was worried that, that she wasn't going to be up to, scratch or whatever. And this imposter syndrome thing that women tend to suffer with. And it was like, we're never going to give up on you, because you have the drive and you want to do it, and you can do it. And you know more than you think you know, and stuff like that. But when I was feeling 30 years ago and upwards, sort of at the beginning of my career, when I felt like that, I didn't have that support. So now there is that support. And again, we got a letter from a woman who said that her daughter, who was 7, had said that she wanted to be a plumber. And people at her school had teased her. And she wanted to change her mind. And she came home crying, and her mum said, what's up? And she told her. So she wrote to us and she said, look, this has happened. And so I put that out to our community, and I had so many letters, actually letters that were sent to me that I put in a big envelope. And I gave her my book, which is called The Joy of Plumbing, by the way. You can find it on Amazon. And sent that to her. And she wrote, the girl wrote back and said, thank you so much. And she wrote a thank you letter to every single person who had written to her, and said, now when people tell me, I'm not going to let them put me down. And, and I said, read this book now, but read it in 10 years' time.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And so those are the sorts of stories that we can only do that because of social media, in a way, and we've also heard things like, if it wasn't for the trade, I'd be in the gutter. And that's where, if it wasn't for me training, I'd be I'd be working behind a till in Tesco's or whatever, And this has been so brilliant for me, because now it means I can go on holiday. And also, like, newly self-employed people, like somebody went on leave, and she kind of contacted us, and we put her on our pilot register. And she was like, well, I don't even know if I want to go back now. I might just want to be self-employed. And then things went a bit quiet, and she wrote and said, I'm a bit worried, maybe I should go back to work. And we just said to her, look, enjoy this time, because it's going to come back. And I can promise you this, because every time because I've spent that time doing those things, I know I've worried about the phone not ringing. And then I thought, oh my God, when is this phone ever going to stop ringing? So, I said to her, enjoy this time, because when it starts, you're going to have to be fighting people off. And even to try and get off the tools, I've said to customers, I'm trying to get off the tools, what have you. And people are still writing to me saying, when can you come and do my heating? I'm like, so instead of telling them I'm getting off the tools, I say, I'm not available till April. And they say, well, I'll wait for you. and those sorts of things happen to us all the time. So if you're a woman in trades, if you're feeling bad, or if you're feeling down, or if you're feeling like it's not going to work for you, I can promise you it will. And just get in touch with us. We are at www.registeroftradeswomen.com.
Amazing. We'll put a link in the description below, so you can click on that, go straight there. And obviously, I think Hattie said there's a button on there for registering to the register. So go ahead and crack on. And
we're a friendly bunch as well. You can join our Facebook group and get support from there as well.
Amazing. Hattie, look, thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you very much for giving us your stories, and giving hopefully a a group of people a hope and also advice on how they can get into trade, and also from businesses. If you're thinking about this, you've got some work to do, but it's definitely worth it.
Thanks, Jason.
I've spoken to Hattie many times, and I love how a success isn't defined by being a woman. It's all about being a good business person, figuring out what works and putting her energy into that. She's doing some fantastic things to support tradeswomen who are underrepresented in the industry. I definitely recommend, if you're a tradeswoman, go and check out the new UK Register. I'll put a link in the description below to where you can learn more. If you're a tradeswoman, please share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. As ever, you can find us online by searching for Commusoft. Feel free to subscribe so you don't miss out any episodes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.